There's a hole in your logic, dear Liza, there's a hole in your logic, dear Liza, a hole.
Henry, you ignorant, neck-bearded, misogynistic, wife-beating incel! Shut the hell up and get back in the box! You're interrupting the scam!
HBR Talk with Hannah Wallen. As we discussed last week, feminism's toxic masculinity narrative is a sham. They've stolen a term from legitimate discussion about toxic attitudes other people have toward men, and they've twisted it into a buzzword that can be used to stifle that discussion by drowning it in blame and shame. Ultimately, feminists end up perpetuating the very types of attitudes about men, masculinity, and so-called gender violence that prevent men from being able to protect themselves against all types of abuse. We know that there are some major hurdles faced by abused men seeking help to escape and recover from their experiences or situations. Their vulnerability to abuse is often invisible to the people around them and sometimes even to themselves. They often cannot trust that there will be any support for them if their vulnerability is recognized. If they discuss being victimized, they may be met with anything from apathy toward their situation and their welfare to outright hostility, especially from the feminists who control access to abuse victims' resources. The popular narrative is to condemn men who don't seek help as backward-thinking troglodytes who would be fine if they would just stop being so stoic. This, feminists tell us, is solely attributable to toxic masculinity, which feminists say, quote, tells men they're not allowed to talk about their problems. However, research into men's help-seeking experiences shows the problem is nowhere near solely attributable to the victim's own attitude. In their paper, The Help-Seeking Experiences of Men Who Sustain Intimate Partner Violence, An Overlooked Population and Implications for Practice, Emily Douglas and Denise Hines surveyed 302 men who had sought help in response to their experiences of abuse. About 1/4 to 1/3 of their respondents who had sought help from DV hotlines actually received assistance. The rest had a variety of complaints. Many respondents reported being told the organizations that run these hotlines only help women, or being accused of being batterers and referred to perpetrator programs. About 1 in 6 men who contacted DV hotlines or local organizations reported that the staff made fun of them. The team also reported on men's experience with law enforcement, stating that in only about half of cases the abusive partner was deemed the primary aggressor. In about 1/4 of cases, police ignored or dismissed the violence, and in 38.7%, they said there was nothing they could do and left. The team also noted that previous research had documented instances where abused men who had sought help from police were themselves arrested. They found that men who were failed by these systems were more likely to experience post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health conditions, substance abuse, and an inability to escape the abuse they were suffering. Their recommendations for these systems included a re-examination by faculty in the social sciences who prepare future social service practitioners concerning their family violence curricula, and changes to training of all helping professionals who might come into contact with intimate partner violence victims. This report was done in 2011. The problems highlighted in it persist, largely unaddressed, to this day. The social attitudes we discussed last week are contributing factors. While most people know at least one abused man, the public is largely unaware that the problem represents a social phenomenon or that abused men's help-seeking experiences commonly differ dramatically from those of women. Public support for law, policy, and organizations involved in the handling of intimate partner and sexual violence does not rely on fair treatment or even any compassion for male victims because the public is unaware and unconcerned that these are lacking. Politicians will not enact reform in these areas without public support, and there are groups trying to actively maintain the current state of affairs because it is profitable for them. It is into this spinning void that the men's rights movement has to step, to boldly convey what people unconsciously don't want to know, so that public support for reform can be raised. Our goal is simple. We do not seek to take resources away from female victims of abuse. We only seek to widen and sharpen the scope of our society's existing response. Our goal is for all victims to have equal access to recourse and resources, and for those systems to be made less exploitable by abusers seeking to use them as a tool of coercive control. We will continue to face opposition to our efforts. We will continue to be openly demonized by our opponents for the crime of having equal compassion and accountability standards for both sexes. But our weapons are far more powerful than their lies. Lies are thin, weak, fragile, and unstable. They are nothing but shadows, easily destroyed by the light of fact and rational thought. Public support for a position may be held for a time by loyalty as to a team, but when they're given information that proves they're on the lying side of it, people can and do change their minds. It's a long and hard battle to win the hearts and minds of the public, but it has been done by other initiatives, and it can be done again. As long as we can weather the grifters' tantrums, we will fill that void with information, logic, understanding, and ideas, and we will win that fight. This week, HBR Talk, featuring Deborah Pawnee, will continue our discussion about the hurdles faced by help-seeking men, what changes are needed in order for our society to actually provide male victims with the help they need, and what the men's rights movement can do to help make those changes happen. We stream on multiple platforms. You can tune in to the live stream on YouTube via the link in the low bar, or find other viewing and listening options on badgerfeed.com and honeybadgerbrigade.com.